The worst thing I've ever seen, there's a bunch, but I'm gonna go with a tie. First would be that cup of tofu sitting on the computer. I walked into the studio one day. That was terrifying to me that someone would do that. And it ties with the Phantom Menace in 3D. I watched that and it was awful. It was maybe the worst thing I've ever seen. I couldn't believe I paid money to go see that. And I had to, yes, make a cup of tofu. There we go.
Well, yeah. Well, the worst thing I ever seen personally was the photo of Emmett Till when, yeah, it was in Jet Magazine. And I saw it when I was 11 years old for the first time, and I did not know what it was because it didn't look human at all. And it was a boy that was almost the same age as I was, and that was one of the most terrifying things I ever seen. So, yeah, if you don't know what Emmett Till is, look it up, basically.
Can you describe it?
Emmett Till, oh my God. Oh, well, I mean, like, it's not that bad now because I've seen it like 1,000 times, but like I said before, it just didn't look like a human being. The face was badly beaten. Like I said before, if you don't know who Emmett Till is, he was, I want to say, a 15-year-old boy that went to Mississippi for a summer vacation and whistled at a white lady. And her husband and other white men had beat him to death and beat him badly to the point that his face was unrecognizable. And it was all on the news, everywhere. And everybody knew that those men were guilty, but they never went to jail for the crime that they did. And confessed to it in a magazine years later, so yeah.
Okay, the worst thing I've ever seen in my life had to have been when I was about 17 and I went to volunteer at a retirement home. And there was like the Alzheimer's wing that I saw. And I guess it was horrifying because I walked by someone's room and there was this elderly woman who was slapping herself and she was yelling, "I can't feel it," which was just really depressing and kind of a horrible thing to have seen. And then, you know, the rest of the experience wasn't particularly uplifting either, but it's kind of a scene that's burned in my mind as something that was not particularly, well, wasn't positive and actually was pretty horrifying. It was probably the most terrible thing I've ever seen.
I remembered some more things that I saw that were horrible. I think I was coming out of the Phantom Menace and to take a break, and I went to go, they were closing down the concession stand. I don't know if it was Phantom Menace, but it probably was. And they're closing down a concession stand, and I go up there, and I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, I want to get some popcorn real quick. And they were saying, like, you know, sorry, the register's closed. I can't help you out. I was all like, but look at all that popcorn. I can't give you some cash, or can you just give me some? And they're like, sorry. And then this guy comes up and takes right in front of me and takes all the popcorn, dumps it in the trash can, and then carries that bag of popcorn out to the trash. That was a pretty horrible thing to see, waste of food like that. What else? The other one was, can I say something that I didn't actually see? Oh my God, yes. Oh my Lord, yes. How did I not think of this? Okay, let me pull up the picture real quick so I can actually have a visual for you guys. So I'm down in Austin last week, and we go to this place called, I don't even remember the name of it. It's some Mexican restaurant called like Cujo's or something like that. I don't remember exactly. And so we're sitting there, and where is it? We're sitting there. Oh my God, this is the worst. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. Okay, so we decided to go in and eat at this place, and I've heard that menudo soup is really good. I've never tried menudo soup, so I was like, well, I'm gonna try the menudo soup here. This place looks like it's, you know, pretty authentic, and I know that it has beef stomach in it. I knew that going into it, but I just wasn't gonna eat it. I was just gonna do it for the broth. So we ordered this menudo soup. Thank God we ordered the cup versus the bowl, because this cup was, I would call it a bowl. So the bowl must have been like a 5-gallon bucket. And so anyhow, like bring it out. It's got all these like, you can see like the cilia and the little, all the stuff on the inside of the stomach cut up on these pieces, and they're just kind of like, you can just see it, and it's just all swollen because it's been soaking up all this stuff. I was like, this doesn't look very good. But like I said, I'm just gonna do the broth. I took a spoonful of it, and it was, sewage comes to mind. Like it made me think of like the smell of a sewer. And I was like, this can't be what, no one would ever tell me to eat this. Like, this is horrible. So I added some cilantro and some lime and all that stuff and tried to, get it a little better flavor out of it. And I tried it again, it was still the same. I was like, oh, this is horrible. And I'd convinced my buddy Brandon to get a bowl too, because I'd heard it was good. And so he's like looking at me like, this is horrible. Why would you recommend this? And he's like digging around in his soup, and he goes like all the way to the bottom. And when his spoon comes up, the closest thing we could think it was or compare it to was the molar of a cow. It was like a cow tooth, and I'm not even joking. It was like a huge, massive cow tooth, and it was gross. And we're like, oh, it's probably just some cartilage or some bone or something. And he like pulls it out and taps his spoon on it, and it's like tink, 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 and it's just like sounded exactly like a tooth. So I don't know if you'll be able to focus on this, but there is the tooth. I'm going to zoom in on it here in a second. Look at that thing. All right, stay there. I'm going to zoom in on it so you can get a closer look to verify that that is in fact a cow tooth. And that's the worst thing I've ever seen.
Okay, the worst thing I've ever seen was my own fault. I had this locker in high school, and I wouldn't use it very often because I didn't tend to use my textbooks as often as I should have. And so occasionally I'd leave food in there, and I left a banana in there, and I was just like, oh, I'll remember, I'll come back in a couple of weeks. I did not remember, and there was a holiday, and when we came back, it smelled so bad that everyone could smell it. Like the whole hall could smell it. Like in the classrooms, it was awful. And this was the locker closed. Yeah, when I eventually did take it out, it was the worst thing I'd ever seen. And that was horrifying. That was really horrifying. It didn't look like a banana anymore. It looked like something else.
I've seen a lot of worse things in my life now that we've been talking about this topic, and all of them are coming to me today. So I think I'm going to start off mild and get to the big one. But I think today was like, in class we had to make trailers, and this girl made a trailer for Piranha 3D. And the worst thing was this part where the piranhas were like eating all these kids that were on spring break. And this girl, like, I guess they had picked her up out the water and they thought she was fine, but the piranhas had like ate across her waist. And when the people had both picked her up on both sides, like one was holding her, the top part of her body and the other part, the bottom half. And when they went to lift her up, her body like separated in half. It was so gross. It's like, even though I know it's a movie, it was still so nasty. It was like, oh my God, it's so gross. I can still see it. I think I'm probably gonna have nightmares about it tonight. But that was pretty bad. That was one of the worst things that I saw today. And another one, speaking of spring break, over spring break, I went to go see the movie Spring Breakers with James Franco. Worst thing ever was James Franco with braids, French braids to the back in a grill. It was so disgusting. And all he kept saying was spring break, spring break, the whole entire time. It was really nasty. But another worst thing I saw, when I was 13, I went to go visit my dad for the summer, and worst thing I saw that day, he left me in the house for a couple minutes by myself. He's like, I'll be right back. And so I went to go play like I don't know why I pressed the VCR button or something, but I pressed play. And what comes on? A porno. I was 13. Like, I had never seen something so graphic in my life. I just wanted to vomit. I was like, what was that? Like, I'm gonna need counseling after this whole ordeal. It was so disgusting. I was just like, wow, that's what happens. That's how it goes. It was really nasty. So yeah, that's the end of my worst things ever that I could think of at the moment.
Okay, I remembered another one. It was when I was maybe like 6. It's one of my earliest memories. And we were up in Canton, Missouri, where my grandparents live. And my grandmother was going to take me and my 2 other cousins to church. And everyone else had already left, so we were riding with Grandma. And it was cold, bitter cold day. We were all bundled up. And both my cousins one's 1 year older than me, and the other one was like 3 years older than me. So I was the youngest in the car, and she's backing out of the garage. She starts the car, and we heard something, and she like backs out, and we see out in front of the car this little kitten just flailing around, and it was like, it had been, when she started the car, like the fan, I guess, cut it really bad, and it was just like flopping around, like it was horrible. And we were all in the car like oh my God, no, like so sad for this cat. And my grandma like gets out, walks up to it, and just like stomps on its head and kills it and puts it out of its misery. But we were all in the car, and we're just like watching, and we're like, Grandma! Like she just turned into this like now it's awesome because it's like she put that cat out of its misery the hard way, but to your kid you're like, oh my God, I just watched Grandma like rub this kitten out and kill it. So but yeah, my grandma's hardcore.
When I was a vegetarian, I used to eat donuts a lot because I loved them, and we used to get them from my high school's little like coffee shop, and they were disgusting, but they were donuts, so we'd eat them. And then one time, I bit into one. I think it was probably like my second one that day or something. It was, instead of having like nothing as a filling, like they didn't have fillings usually, it had this disgusting like lardy butter that was like really, really salty, and it was like cold and thick. And it was the worst thing I've ever tasted in my life. And it was so upsetting because, like, you know, donuts, they're a beautiful thing. You trust them. But never again. And I didn't have donuts for like 2 months after that. But, so that was one of the worst things I've ever seen, and one of the worst things I've ever tasted, which isn't really something you want to intersect.
Okay, so I have another worst thing that I saw. It was a couple probably, but I don't know how old I was, probably like in 5th or 6th grade. I used to live with my aunt and my 2 cousins, like me and my mom and my sisters, we lived with my aunt and my boy cousin and my girl cousin. And so me and my boy cousin, we used to be on the internet, like just looking up crazy stuff all the time. So one time we were on this internet and we heard about this website called Rotten.com. I don't even know if it's still around because it is super disgusting, like, and I'm too scared to look it up again, but it's called Rotten.com, and they used to just have the most grossest pictures on there, from like anything from like dead people to like people with like gross stuff like growing off it. It was just really nasty. But this one picture that I still remember to this day was like this decomposing body, like this man, he was in his house for like, I don't know how long. He was laying in his bed listening to headphones, and he was in there so long that the headphones had started to like meld into his ears, and it was just really gross. And he was obese, so he was like so big, and like it was liquids like all like from his body like seeping into the bedspread. And he was like, you don't know what race he was, like he was unrecognizable. All you saw was like this big blob of flesh. It was like brown or blackish. It's like all this liquid. It was so nasty. It was like he was like a big fat egg, or like, I don't know even what word could describe it, but it was so gross. And the fact that I still remember it is still like, haunting me to this day. It was really gross though. But yeah, that's one of the worst things that I've seen too. Also, as well, whatever. Yeah, it was really nasty. But yeah, that's it.